"No space for my kids this Christmas," my mom said. My brother laughed. Then shock. Too, they say revenge is a dish best served cold. But what if, after it's devoured, you realize you've poisoned yourself too? It all began with a phone call, just days before Christmas. The kind of call that feels mundane at first, full of festive chatter about timings and food, until it takes an abrupt, chilling turn. That turn came when my own mother, in a voice laced with discomfort, told me and my daughter, Lily, there simply wasn't space for us this year. I waited for her to correct herself, to laugh and say it was a terrible joke. She didn't. Then, in the background, I heard my brother, Caleb. He actually laughed and tossed out, "Let's be real, they're a bit much." A bit much. That was it. That was the throwaway line that shattered my daughter's Christmas. Not even aimed at her directly, just a careless dismissal. At that very moment, Lily was in our kitchen, humming a little tune, meticulously frosting cookies shaped like reindeer. She'd spent days on handmade cards for her cousins, even wrapped their gifts herself and hid them in my closet, checking every night to make sure I hadn't found them. She was so proud of them. And he just dismissed her. I didn't argue on that call. I didn't defend us. I just hung up, standing there longer than I should have, the silence in my apartment suddenly deafening. I hated myself for that quiet inaction. Later that night, after Lily was asleep, I methodically loaded every single gift I'd bought for Caleb's kids into my car. I'd gone overboard this year, as I always did. It was my thing, spoiling the kids. Sneakers, collectibles, electronics, things they'd talked about all year. I returned all of it. Every receipt, every box, over $1,600 back onto my card. I told myself it was practical, that it wasn't revenge. But I slept better that night than I had in weeks. The next morning, at 8 a.m. sharp, my phone buzzed. A text from Caleb. "They're crying. Where are their gifts?" I stared at the message, a slow, burning anger finally reaching my hands. I typed back, "Maybe you should ask Mom." I heard space was an issue this year. He called immediately. I didn't answer. Then Mom called. I let it ring. Instead, I made French toast for Lily and me. We ate it on the floor, our usual Christmas morning tradition. Lily didn't complain about the missing gifts. She just asked if maybe next year would be better, if the presents would be at Grandma's then. I told her yes, because at that point, I desperately needed to believe it. What Caleb didn't know is that he wasn't just the family favorite. He was the office favorite too. And for years, I had been the silent architect behind his success. Fixing his mistakes, making introductions, covering for him when he slipped. That morning, while he was texting me about crying kids, a dangerous thought started to take root: how fragile his perfect life actually was. And that thought, once planted, refused to leave. The funny thing about people like Caleb is they're masters of rewriting history. Once they get what they want, everyone who helped them becomes invisible. He loved to tell people he'd grinded his way to the top, that he came from nothing and built himself up through sheer hustle. What he conveniently omitted was that I was the one who got him in the door. I walked him into his first interview at my company, prepped him, stayed up late practicing with him, even personally recommended him. He was fresh off a messy job exit, and no one else would touch him. I vouched for him. Again and again. I gave him my old laptop, paid his phone bill when he couldn't, even got him out of a mess with a client by reworking an entire pitch deck from scratch at midnight, all while Lily was homesick with the flu. And I never once asked for credit. Never wanted any. I genuinely thought we were family. I thought that meant something. Turns out, it just meant I was useful until I wasn't. After Christmas, I couldn't stop thinking about Lily sitting in front of that tree, trying so hard not to look disappointed. She hadn't said a word about the missing gifts. Instead, she quietly took the small presents she'd wrapped herself and asked, "Can I still give them out later, just in case they change their mind?" That line, "just in case they change their mind," hit me harder than anything else. I realized I had spent my entire adult life hoping they'd change their minds about me, about my worth, about my place in the family. But they hadn't. They didn't need to. They had Caleb. And I had always made it easy for them to treat me like backup. But not anymore. Caleb and I worked in the same company, though in different divisions. I had recently been promoted to Senior Operations Manager, a role with access to internal systems most people didn't even know existed. Budget reports, performance logs, client feedback, expense claims. It didn't take long before I started noticing things about Caleb's team that didn't sit right. Meetings scheduled with clients who no longer existed. Travel reimbursements for locations that didn't match their sales territories. Duplicate invoices. Consultants that looked suspiciously like fake names. It wasn't my job to audit his division, but I started building a file anyway. I kept it clean. No emotion, just documents, timestamps, and screenshots. Quiet. Methodical. Like I was folding laundry. I didn't have a plan yet, but something in me had fundamentally shifted. I wasn't going to stay quiet anymore. Then, one afternoon in early January, I was pulled into a leadership meeting. Our CEO, Diane, was there. She was no nonsense, sharp as glass, and trusted me. After the meeting, I caught her in the hallway and asked if she had 5 minutes. I didn't give her names. I just told her I'd noticed a pattern in a few expense logs that didn't look right and offered to send her a report. She said yes. Simple as that. That night, I finalized the report. I stripped my name from everything, formatted it like a compliance flag raised by an anonymous team member. When I hit send, I didn't include a note. Just the file. 3 days later, Caleb was called into HR. He thought it was routine. Then he came out white as a sheet. I didn't say a word. He didn't call me. He called Mom. She called me, panicked. Told me someone had accused Caleb of serious misconduct. Said he might be suspended, that he was in shock. She asked if I'd heard anything. I told her no. She sighed, like that confirmed everything. Like I was still the good one. But I wasn't the good one anymore. I was the one holding the match. And the fire was only just beginning. Caleb messaged me 2 days after his meeting with HR. Can we talk? Not, hi, not, I'm sorry, not, how's Lily? Just that. I agreed. Told him to meet me at a diner near the office. Not because I owed him anything. I just wanted to see his face when he realized the person he used to step on had finally moved the ground beneath him. He showed up looking worse than I'd ever seen him. Rumpled suit, eyes tired, like he hadn't slept in days. He sat down without a word and stared at the table for a second. Then he launched into it. Said someone had made a big deal out of nothing. That the company was hunting for scapegoats. That everyone pads a few numbers, that fake meetings were basically standard in his division, and no one cared until now. I waited. Then he said it. You're close with Diane, right? You could talk to her. Just explain I'm not a bad guy. There it was. The casual assumption that I'd clean up his mess. That I'd do what I always did. Protect him, fix things behind the scenes, play the responsible one while he walked away untouched. But this time, he didn't realize the room was on fire because I lit the match. I didn't laugh. I didn't argue. I just looked at him and said, very calmly, I can't help. He didn't push it, just nodded, stood up, and walked out like it was just another failed pitch meeting. 2 days later, he was gone. No announcement. His name was scrubbed from the employee portal. His inbox disabled. LinkedIn quietly updated to open to new opportunities. I kept waiting to feel something. Guilt. Relief. Triumph. Instead, it was just quiet. Then something strange happened. 3 nights after his termination, I walked past Lily's room and saw her going through her closet. She had a box of gifts, small ones. A drawing for each cousin, a bracelet, a letter written on holiday stationery that said things like, "You're the best at video games, and I hope we hang out more this year." I thought she'd forgotten about those. She hadn't. She asked if she could still give them their gifts. Said it didn't feel right to keep them. I told her we'd figure something out. That night, when it was dark, I left the package at Caleb's front door. No note, no explanation, just the small box wrapped in silver paper. The next morning, I got a text from Caleb. "I know that was you. Thank you." I didn't answer. And that should have been the end of it. But later that day, around 4 p.m., I got a message from a blocked number. No subject, just an attachment. It was a screenshot of the internal report I had sent to Diane. The same one I'd scrubbed clean of any identifiers. Only now, my file name was visible at the top. Operations.myinitials.pdf. My stomach dropped. I sat still for a full minute. Not because I was scared, but because I realized something I hadn't considered. Caleb wasn't just careless. He was vindictive. And someone in that office, someone I trusted, had sent him the file. He wasn't just out of work. He was looking for someone to blame. And now he knew exactly where to point the finger. The moment I saw that file name, operations.myinitials.pdf, I knew I had miscalculated. Not just Caleb, but everyone around him. Someone in the company had forwarded him the report I sent to Diane. Someone close enough to me to have seen it. Someone I probably said good morning to, without knowing they were sliding knives into my back. For a few minutes, I just stared at the screen. The initials were mine. The format was mine. And the damage? That was coming. Caleb hadn't texted again after his short-lived gratitude over Lily's gift box. But this was a message. No words, just the screenshot, as if to say, I know, and now I'm coming for you. I didn't respond. I didn't tell Diane. I didn't do anything. Not right away. I went to work the next morning like nothing happened. Smiled. Sat in meetings. Answered questions. But I felt it. The shift. People looked at me too quickly, or not at all. I saw two of Caleb's old team members whispering in the kitchen when I walked in. They stopped when they saw me. One of them gave me a weird half-smile, like they were trying to remember if they liked me or not. The feeling was unmistakable, suspicion. Then, 4 days later, Diane called me in. She wasn't warm. She wasn't cold either. She was Diane, composed, impossible to read. She told me Caleb had contacted her, claiming I'd orchestrated everything because of a personal family issue, and that I had access to tools other employees didn't. He claimed I selectively edited data, manipulated logs, that I made him a target. I asked her if she believed him. She didn't answer the question. She just said they were opening a formal review. Protocol. Temporary access restrictions. Nothing disciplinary, just caution. I wasn't being punished. Not officially. But I'd been here long enough to know what this meant. Once there's doubt, you're already halfway out the door. Then she pulled out a printed email. An anonymous complaint from someone in Caleb's division. Apparently, I'd been overheard in the break room saying, sometimes people need to be taught a lesson. I searched my memory. Maybe I said something like that in passing. Maybe I didn't. But it didn't matter. The damage was done. It was enough to justify the review. When I left her office, I didn't go back to my desk. I walked outside and sat in my car, just sat there with the engine off. I wasn't scared, not really. I'd done everything by the book. But I was shaken. Not because of what they believed, but because I had been so careful and someone still found a way in. At home, Lily was sitting on the couch waiting for me with a stack of books and a handwritten museum list. She'd been researching exhibits she wanted to see that weekend. I sat next to her and nodded as she went through them. I smiled when she showed me the one about volcanoes, but all I could think about was how close I was to becoming the villain in a story I wrote to protect her. That night, I couldn't sleep. I pulled out my old external drive, the one I hadn't touched in years. It was a backup from a time when I used to help Caleb with projects on weekends. When I used to clean up his messy proposals. When I still believed he'd grow into the position he was handed. What I found on that drive stopped me cold. There were files I'd forgotten. I had notes, drafts, raw versions of proposals he had submitted under his name. And voice memos, old ones, where he dictated whole emails and asked me to reword them to make them sound smarter. At the time, I'd thought nothing of it, just a sister helping her brother. But looking at it now, all together in a clean little folder with timestamps and metadata, I realized something. I didn't need to defend myself. I just needed to remind the company exactly who built the version of Caleb they thought they knew. I had been quiet long enough. The folder was more than just old work. It was a record of everything Caleb had taken credit for. Right down to the phrasing, the formatting. I opened a PDF from 4 years ago, a client pitch he won an internal award for, and there it was, my watermark faint in the corner. I hadn't even noticed it at the time. Back then, I was helping him get ahead. Now it was evidence. Proof that without me, he never would have gotten in the door, let alone up the ladder. I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired. But I also felt clear. The mistake I made before was thinking Caleb would stop. That taking his job was enough. That he'd sulk, lick his wounds, and vanish. I forgot who he was. A man who couldn't stand the idea that someone might see him as second best, especially me. Now he was trying to drag me down just to stay level. And I was done being polite about it. I spent the next 2 nights building a full report. Every project I'd ghostwritten for him. Every proposal I'd touched. Voice memos with his requests, Slack messages from years ago where he begged for help minutes before a meeting. I layered everything with dates, file versions, metadata, screenshots. No flair, just facts. Then I emailed Diane directly. I didn't say, Caleb is lying or I'm being targeted. I said, here's the timeline of every piece of work I've contributed to Caleb's performance in the last 6 years. I believe this context will help you evaluate the current claims fairly. And I attached the file. I expected silence. I got a meeting request. When I walked into Diane's office, the mood was different. She wasn't looking at me like I was under review anymore. She asked how long I had been helping Caleb behind the scenes. I told her since day one. I admitted I had enabled it, that I let it happen for too long. She didn't nod or smile. She just said one thing, why didn't you come forward earlier? I didn't answer. Because the real answer was embarrassing, because I thought it was family, because I thought keeping peace mattered more than being respected. By the end of the week, the internal investigation was over. The retaliation claims were dismissed. And quietly, so quietly I almost missed it, the employee who leaked the file was gone. Apparently, they'd forwarded internal documents to Caleb using a personal email. Violation of data policy. Immediate termination. I never asked who it was. I didn't care. They made their choice. What caught me off guard was what happened next. HR reached out, not to discipline, but to offer me a new role. Higher clearance, cross-department oversight. A quiet acknowledgement of what I'd done. No press release, no celebration, just a new email signature and a line in my file that read, internal conflict resolved with professionalism. That should have been the end of it. But then, about a week later, I got a voicemail from Caleb. Not angry. Not apologetic. Desperate. Rachel, I need help. I can't get a single interview. Word's gotten around. No one's calling back. I know you're mad, but you're the only one who knows how this works. Please, just tell me what to do. I stared at the phone for a long time. This man who once told me my daughter was a bit much, who erased me from every success he ever had, who laughed when we were excluded at Christmas. Now he was asking me for help. I didn't respond. I didn't delete the voicemail either. And I didn't feel satisfied like I thought I would. I felt something else. Something heavier. I kept the voicemail. I don't know why. Maybe to remind myself it happened. Maybe because some part of me still needed proof that Caleb had finally said the one thing he never had before, I need you. But I didn't call him back. I couldn't. Not because I wanted revenge anymore. That part had passed. It was something else now. For weeks, I told myself it was justice. That he deserved to fall. That everything he lost was because of choices he made, not because of anything I did. And that was technically true. But it didn't sit the way I thought it would. I had won quietly, completely. He was unemployed. His reputation was damaged. Every door he knocked on was closed, and he had no idea that I was the reason they stayed that way. But winning didn't feel clean. It felt like something I couldn't undo. I started avoiding mirrors. Not literally, just the kind of reflection that sneaks up on you when everything's quiet and no one needs anything from you. The kind that asks questions you can't answer. Like, when exactly did I stop trying to protect Lily and start trying to destroy him? Or asterisk, did I really do all of this for her? Or was I just tired of being the one everyone stepped over? Asterisk, I didn't talk to anyone about it. Not even Lily. She was back to normal. Or at least what normal looked like for a kid who'd learned too early what being left out feels like. She never asked about her cousins again. Never mentioned Christmas. She just moved on. Kids are good at that. Adults, not so much. One night, weeks later, I found myself rereading that voicemail's transcript. The desperation in it. The way he finally saw what it meant to be ignored. And I hated that a part of me liked it. That was the worst part of all of this. I hadn't just exposed Caleb. I had exposed something in myself. Something cold. Capable of precision. And silence. He had underestimated me. They all had. But I had underestimated myself too. I thought I was just trying to protect my daughter. But somewhere along the way, I became the kind of person who knew exactly how to ruin someone. And did. I walk around with this weight now, a quiet understanding of the shadows within me. Was I justified? Absolutely. But the victory still tastes complicated. It makes me wonder, what's the cost of winning when it changes who you are? If you've ever had to fight for your worth or seen a different side of yourself in the process, I want to hear about it. What would you have done differently? Let me know in the comments below.